Good morning. Who's on here? Anyone want to say hello? Oh, come on. Grab your coffees. Hi, Sue. All right, we're going to get started. Hey, Donna. Thanks for jumping on, guys. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the connection between sleep and weight or fat loss. This is a huge topic. Hey, Lena, are you walking this morning as well? this is a this is a huge topic, and we can talk about sleep and the connection it has with weight loss for hours. But today, I really want to sort of hone in on a couple of the benefits of sleep that have been proven over time, the reason why sleep can have such an impact on weight loss, and then at the end, three very easy takeaways that you can start doing if you're not already doing them on a daily basis at home during ISO. So sleep over the last 50 years has changed, much like our nutrition and much like our exercise routines. So if you think back prior to the 1960s, before the agricultural revolution, before technology, we didn't have a lot of stimulus action that was keeping us awake at night, that was keeping us our hormones stimulated. And there's some particular hormones that are being stimulated on a daily basis in today's world that are impacting our sleep. So the 1950s was, the 1960s was kind of when the food revolution occurred and sugar came about, processed foods came about, and that really started to change our society. We embraced McDonald's and Coca-Cola, and it was a new Western way of eating and living, especially coming out of World War II, where there was a starvation period that occurred. So, unfortunately, the impact of the last 50 years in terms of sugar production and processed foods production has a huge impact on our weight and how our relationship with food has developed over those years. So, how this impacts our sleep is another factor that sugar has had on our body. So, for example, we're talking about sugar, some of the products that are in sugar. So sugar is not just one form. There's maltodextrin, there's dextrin. There's lots of different types of sugars that are impacting some of our hormones. One in particular that I'm going to talk about is cortisol. The other thing about the last 50 years, which I just touched base on, is technology. And the reason why I like to mention technology is because that is also impacting our cortisol levels. Now, cortisol is referred to and known as a stress hormone. Its job is to is come into fight for us. It's an anti-inflammatory chemical hormone. So we've probably heard of the fight or flight situation when our body is impacted immediately by a certain situation. We go into a fight or flight mode, which means our sympathetic nervous system comes into play. Cortisol immediately comes in to rescue us as an anti-inflammatory and fight off uh, any invaders that are there putting stress on our body. That's its job. Okay, it's actually a very important job. It's got a very bad rap over the years, and I'll explain why it's had a bad rap over the years. But its job is to fight off the stress, the immediate stress that the body is feeling at that point. Now, the problem that's occurred over the last 50 years is our lifestyle has changed. Our lifestyle's changed in respect to the nutrition that we're eating, i.e. the sugars and the processed foods, and the technology that we are using as part of life now. So think about how many times in today's world, especially now in isolation, we are using our phone, on our laptop, watching Netflix. Our kids are on their iPads. Wherever we go, we are using technology, and lots of it. Technology is having an impact on our brains by stimulating cortisol levels. So again, cortisol there to fight off any stresses. So the body doesn't understand whether you're being chased by a bear and that's a stress, or you're watching Netflix and that's applying stress on your brain. Cortisol is still going to come into play. So think about now how much of your day has stress involved in it. We get up in the morning, we've got to take the kids to school. Well, not so much today, these days, but we've got to get them ready for school. We've got to get ourselves ready for work. We are living in a very fast-paced environment, which again applies stress on the body. So cortisol is working. It's there to fight off the stress it is feeling. Doesn't differentiate between the different types of stress, just knows it needs to help and fight stress. So that state of being is physiologically called the sympathetic nervous system, okay, where cortisol is primarily working. Now, the problem with that is it's not switching off. So if it's not switching off, then what impact is that having on the body? And it's having quite a huge impact on the body. So with cortisol, there is an opposing hormone called melatonin. And a lot of people may have heard of melatonin. Melatonin is the antagonistic hormone to cortisol, and it's supposed to work in the opposite to cortisol. So for example, stress occurs, cortisol comes in, fights off that stress. The stress is gone, cortisol steps away, melatonin steps in. That sounds fine in theory, but that's not the way it's working. So melatonin really should be rising at night time and preparing for bed. But what's happening is we're watching Netflix until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and our cortisol levels are still quite high. So ideally, in the ideal balance of the body, cortisol levels need to be waking up in the morning, okay? So they're coming out from sleep, which should be quite low. Cortisol wakes up in the morning and rises throughout the day until about midday to 3 o'clock. It should be at its peak, okay? So that's where we want cortisol levels as a hormone to be at its peak. After 3 p.m., it starts its decline very slowly until about 5, 6, 7 p.m. at night, and at 9 p.m. at night, cortisol levels should be slowing down to its lowest accounts. And the opposite effect of that is the melatonin. So melatonin needs to be rising in the evening, okay, and elevated throughout the night while you're sleeping. That is our sleep hormone that encourages sleep. It also encourages a state of parasympathetic nervous system, which is opposite to our fight and flight. It's called rest and digest, okay? So really important to try and get these two hormones to work as they're designed to work. So again, melatonin rises at around 6, 7, 8 p.m. at night, preparing us for sleep, preparing us for bed. Throughout the night, it should be rising and at its peak, and then by the morning, when we're waking up, melatonin begins its descent in terms of hormone production, and cortisol steps into play. Now, that's the ideal world, okay? And you will know this once you actually start to apply strategies to improve your sleep. You won't need a clock anymore. Your body just knows. It switches. Yeah, the hormones just switch on at a certain time. For me, it's at 9:30, and it's like someone's just shut my eyes. Immediately, I feel quite tired and I'm ready for bed. Usually at around 6 or 6:30 in the morning, I don't even need an alarm clock. I just wake up, and that's because I've worked over the years to try and get these two hormones to work in balance and as they should. Now, just a little bit more information on how this can impact our weight. So, uh, glucose metabolism. So, glucose metabolism works most effectively during the night. So there is a particular stage of sleep, and we've all heard of deep sleep. That's referred to as rapid eye movement, REM. Now, during our deeper sleep is when glucose metabolism occurs. So our brain is really active during that deep sleep stage, which means it's burning energy. Okay, if it's metabolizing glucose, we are burning glucose. So while we're sleeping, we're burning calories if we are in that deep sleep, if our hormones are working as they should. So that restful night's sleep, where we enter our deep REM stage of sleep, our deep sleep stage, has the most impact on burning calories. Our brain is most active, and we can, once we come out of that, then melatonin will set into play, and we should be waking up quite energetically as well. Okay, we shouldn't be waking up tired. So those are the things that we want to happen. The impact of quality sleep as well as quantity, the amount of sleep, really impacts whether we burn those calories, whether we are eating too late at night, so we don't have the ability for those two hormones to work together because the body is still working on digesting food. Okay, so food is also another stressor on the body. So cortisol is still working. So that's why eating really late at night is not the best. It allows cortisol to stay active, and it disrupts that balance that we're after. Um, just looking at my notes here, guys. Sorry about that. Yeah, cool. So balance, yes, and eating too much at night, eating too late at night, big problem. One of the reasons why in the last 50 years we've gained weight is because our lifestyle, we're working late at night, our lifestyle has impacted us with technology, high sugary foods, and we're not entering into that REM state of deep sleep, which is preventing us from burning quality amounts of calories during the night. Okay, so really important to try and work on improving sleep for those two reasons. And I'm going to give you some takeaways at the end of this to sort of start to help that process for yourself. Now, the second set of hormones that I wanted to talk to you about is a hormone called leptin, and the opposing hormone to leptin is called ghrelin. Now, leptin, really important hormone, is basically it signals to the brain that we're full. Okay, it is the hormone that tells your brain that you are full. Now, again, over the last 50 years, we've had all these wonderful foods come into play. We're living a lifestyle that's really stressful. We're go, go, go. What's happened is we've gained weight. Okay, we've put on a lot of fat as a result. So the question becomes, well, hang on, if we've got this hormone, why have I put on weight? Because it should be telling us that we're full. So what's happening? Why aren't I getting that message from the body? Couple reasons there. So leptin tells our brain that we are full. Where is leptin produced? It is produced in adipose fat cells, so fat cells. So essentially, if we've got more fat, we should be producing more leptin, which means we should be getting that signal all the time, in theory. However, over the years, overweight and obesity has occurred. We're eating more as a result of lifestyle. We've ignored the messages, and now, if we are obese, we are actually developing leptin resistance, which means that signal is not getting sent to the brain anymore. The brain is rejecting the chemical signal. All right, it's producing, but it is rejecting. So we're not hearing it. Okay, and that's a real huge issue. The reason why it's an issue, leptin is still being produced in the body, and it's so much so having onset effects with other illnesses and diseases. One in particular, it's causing inflammation. Now, most illness and conditions have inflammation in the body. Okay, so it's really important to think about our fat content, our BMI, our body fat. If we have high amounts of body fats, we have high amounts of leptin. If we have high amounts of leptin and are still overweight and obese, then we're not receiving that signal. Okay, we're not receiving that signal, so most likely we've developed a resistance to it, which is stopping us from losing weight. So which comes first, losing weight or leptin sensitivity? Well, we need to lose weight first in order to build and reverse leptin resistance and allow leptin to become more sensitive. Essentially, the less leptin in the body, the more sensitive and responsive the body will be to that chemical hormone. I hope that makes some sense to you. Further to leptin, the reason or one of the strategies to start to reverse that process is sleep. Okay, so a lack of sleep actually has adverse effects on leptin sensitivity. Okay, we actually need at least 7 up to 9 hours sleep every night in order to start to reduce that leptin resistance. All right, and as a result, it'll start to reduce inflammation in the body. So inflammation in the body, again, is another stressor on the body. And as we now know, when there's stress impacted on the body, cortisol comes into play. Okay, so if there's stress on the body, inflammation is there. The body is working towards reducing that inflammation, which is impacting us from sleeping and is impacting us from having really good harmony between cortisol and melatonin and leptin and ghrelin. Haven't really talked about ghrelin much, but basically that's the opposing hormone to leptin, which signals our body that to our brain that we are hungry. Okay, so think about growling tummy. That's ghrelin. All right. I won't go too much into ghrelin and the impact on ghrelin because leptin's probably the most dominating hormone that's causing sleep deprivation, inflammation in the body, and a lot of conditions at the moment. So think about balancing the two between cortisol and melatonin. How can we begin to harmonize those two hormones? Well, here's takeaway number one. It's really important where is it? Here. Create a bedtime routine. Bedtime routine. So I said it last week, the body thrives on routine. The body thrives on having some sort of circadian rhythm. okay, which is your sleep-wake cycle. It doesn't know time, but it does know daytime and nighttime and the rhythm within that. So our body resets at night, okay? So if we're eating our last meal at 7, 8 o'clock at night, watching a little bit of TV, what is your bedtime routine? Start to tell the body that you're preparing for bed. That's going to encourage melatonin, okay, and start to reduce cortisol. And remember, technology activates cortisol in the brain, okay, so it keeps us alert, keeps us stimulated. So turning off the TV, final 5 minutes on your Facebook, an hour or two before bedtime, start to read a book, or have a nightly chat with your partner while you're in bed. Spend an hour just starting to reverse that cycle, and do it at the same time every night. Okay, so it's really important that if you're a person at the moment that goes to bed at 11 o'clock at night and might not fall asleep until midnight or 1 in the morning, okay, it's going to take some practice, but aim to go to bed at maybe 10:30. Okay, start at 10:30. You might be awake for that period of time. That's okay, because eventually your brain and your mind and your body will become habituated into going to bed at 10:30 and fall into that routine. Once you're there, aim to go 15 minutes earlier again, so 10:15, okay, and then eventually 10 o'clock. Same with the other end of your sleep cycle. When you wake up, you might wake up at 5 in the morning. Avoid getting up, okay? Avoid getting up until 6 a.m. or whatever time it is that you need to get up, okay? So eventually, your body will fall into a routine, but like everything, we need to practice, okay? So create a bedtime routine an hour and a half before you go to bed, where there's no electronics, and you're just starting to wind down. Okay, we talk about winding down. That's what it really means. Okay, starting to drop the stresses of the day and encourage our sleep hormone, melatonin, to work for us. All right, that's number one. Number two was eating 2 hours before bed. Okay, so avoid eating 2 hours, at least 2 hours before you go to bed. Okay, we want our food to be fully digested while we enter our sleep cycle. Okay, so remember, if we still have food in our body, and in today's world, we generally have more glucose encouraged food, which comes from carbohydrates, than anything else. During our REM, deep sleep stage, we're going to be burning that food that we've just still digesting in the body, as opposed to burning stored glucose during that REM stage. Okay, so if we've digested our food, every cell in our body has received the energy it needs. It's been digested. During sleep, when glucose metabolism comes into play in that deep sleep stage, it's going to be utilizing stored glucose, as opposed to the late night pasta that you've just had, or whatever that might be. Okay, so avoid eating within the 2 hour window before going to bed, even 3 hours if you can. Okay. Another little handy tip on this one is, if you do feel like a snack before bedtime or after dinner, okay, go for a protein snack. And the reason why is protein is an amino acid. Okay, in that amino acid, there's a particular amino acid called tryptophan. Now, tryptophan encourages melatonin. Okay, so it's really important that if you do feel like a snack, I'm not saying pull a piece of steak out and gnaw on that. Okay, it might be a protein shake, or it might be a couple of nuts and seeds, something like that, something that is protein dominant, because tryptophan will promote the hormone melatonin. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. And the third and final takeaway is exercise, okay? So we want to start to reduce our body fat so that leptin works for us, okay? Exercise, avoid exercising within that same 3-hour window. So remember, the body doesn't differentiate between the kind of stress it is receiving, and exercise is another stress on the body where cortisol levels are elevate. Okay, so exercise outside of that 3-hour window before bed to encourage fat loss and weight loss, which is awesome, and that's going to encourage us to reduce our leptin resistance and eventually become leptin sensitive, as well as avoid keeping cortisol levels high and encourage melatonin levels. Just another quick thing to touch base on before I go through any questions is our parasympathetic nervous system, which I mentioned at the start of this talk. That is our rest and digest. Now, if you've ever been into hospital or know someone that's been in hospital, what does the doctor not often say? They need rest. Sometimes you can only see people one at a time, and that is because they're trying to minimize the amount of stress, minimize the amount of stimulus that is within that person's environment, so that it encourages the rest and digest parasympathetic nervous system, okay, because that is our healing state. Okay, the body heals when it is in that parasympathetic nervous system state. Okay, now something like meditation encourages that. All right, so meditation's become a very big thing in modern society, certainly in the last sort of 10 years or so. And that's because we've really identified now that our life was just so fast and there was so much stimulus around it that conditions and illnesses are not recovering as soon and as quickly as they should. So try and encourage some parasympathetic nervous system methods such as meditation, or just a simple bath at night, okay, where you're winding down with Epsom salts, something like that, can really help that entire sleep process and sleep routine. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. I hope you got something out of it. Just to recap, the 3 takeaways: create a bedtime routine. Number 2, avoid eating within the 2-hour window before you go to bed. And number 3, exercise. Exercise outside of that 3-hour window before bed to encourage fat loss and weight loss. And so we can start to build some leptin sensitivity. Okay, so I'll just go through stress is my bestest friend lately. Oh, Donna, I run 4 to 5 hours sleep, huge light bulb moments, thanks. You're welcome. Yes, 4 to 5 hours sleep. We're not making sleep work for us. And I often say, when it comes to health, weight loss, fat loss, reversing conditions, there's 3 major components. There is exercise, and that is the one that everybody focuses on. But before exercise comes nutrition, okay? And before nutrition comes optimal sleep, okay? Those are the 3 key ingredients for weight loss, fat loss, healthy lifestyle, good condition. Sorry, that's the alarm. Hang on a second. Thanks, Gav. Sorry. So, nutrition, exercise, and sleep. The 3 ingredients to reverse any condition, to promote fat loss and weight loss. Okay, so we can start working on those things. I find it so hard to put my phone away at night. It is really hard, Jane, and even I struggle. We bought an alarm clock, an actual old school alarm clock, which scared the crap out of us the first few nights, and in fact it was probably too loud. So investing in an alarm clock instead of your phone for your alarm, if that's what you use your alarm, your phone for, is one little way of getting rid of the phone in the bedroom. Awesome. I think that's so. If you have any other questions, just pop them in the comments, and I'll answer them throughout the day. I hope you enjoyed today's chat about sleep and the connection between sleep and weight and fat loss. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and have a great weekend.